Hi, this is Dr. Pat Sharp, and I'm the clinic director here at Neuroeducation. I want to present some information to you today about reading disabilities, especially if you're the parent of a young child. So I started Neuroeducation, the business that I own here in Spokane, Washington, 36 years ago. We're a group of licensed counselors and psychologists, and we offer both assessment and treatment for all kinds of learning and behavioral challenges. Today I want to focus on something that our learning clinic does especially well, and that is diagnosing and treating reading disabilities. But to begin with, how do you know what normal sort of young reading looks like in your young child? And I'm going to be talking now about children that are about age 3 through 6-ish. Keep in mind that it's pretty normal in terms of development for kids to start to learn to read at about 4-ish until up through 7. So if we're not reading by 7, it's getting a little bit on the edge of, there must be maybe something a little bit that's different about how he processes information, or she, and those children might need some extra help. Or you may see some of these very early markers in your young reader. These tend to be associated with what turns out to be a reading disability. I hate that term, actually. I much prefer reading difference, meaning that little person just processes and perceives information in a different way. But some of those early markers are difficulties naming the colors. And that's because the name for a color is something quite abstract, much like recognizing the imprint of a word, sort of the graphic picture of a word, and being able to recall what that word says. Another difficulty they may have is kind of later development in learning the names of the letters. And then, of course, the big one is just overall delay in language. Most young children start speaking somewhere around the end of the first year with, like one word, mama or dada or more, which was my little fellow's first word because he was a great big baby, 10 pounds, 14 ounces, and he needed a lot of food. And so early on, maybe at 11 months, he started his first word, which was mo, which stood for more. And oftentimes young children's words are like that. They're not words we recognize, but they are a form of language and are to be recognized as such. Another favorite that he had was Ray Ray, and Ray Ray was his word for raisins. Words like that are still considered language and therefore not delayed. Now, what can you do to help your child whether you see any of these marker difficulties or not? All of these things can help every child. And of course, the number one thing, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, is just read to your child. And you can do fill-ins where you've read the same story, you know this well, many, many times, over and over and over. And then gradually stop your reading, not the very first word or even the second or third word in a sentence, but maybe towards the middle or end of the sentence. Leave out one word and ask the child to fill it in. Meanwhile, what you're doing is you're pointing along with your finger underneath the line so that when you get to the word you want him to say, you're pointing to that word, which therefore allows him this opportunity to see what it looks like and get the idea that this little blob of black marks surrounded by the white spaces, that those things are words. That's a huge concept to get in terms of learning how to read. Now, when they fill in their word, typically, if you have read this story several hundred times, they're going to know exactly what that word is. But if it's a relatively new story, or if it's one you've never read to them before, do accept any word they say that sounds right and makes sense in the context of the other words. It doesn't have to be exactly that word, because all good readers, by the way, do that all the time. They'll make what are called semantic substitutions. And a semantic substitution is basically something that means the same thing as the word that's there, but it's a different word, like gleaming for glittering. And then a second kind of strategy you can use with your little one is after you've read something, even if it's just a short little thing, talk about what you just read, and talk about it in a very animated, excited kind of way, because your child picks up that excitement about, ooh, this is cool, this is fun, reading is neat. And you want them definitely to get that message. Now, keep in mind, your little person has an attention span that's way shorter than yours. So whatever you do, always keep these little reading things to your child very short. And the shortness will depend on how much your child can tolerate. If he starts squirming in 1 minute, stop and make it very positive. And keep it fun. Laugh, joke. Um, say things like, "Oh my gosh, did you see that? Did you see that in your mind?" So they get the idea that when they're reading, you should be seeing things. Oftentimes children don't realize that. Here's another very fun game. Both of my little boys, when they were little, they're now grown adults with their own little boys, loved this game. It was called Loading the Truck. And you put out some letters of the alphabet, and you have them on blocks, or you have them on little cards, or there's all kinds of materials available with letters of the alphabet on them. And you're going to say something like, find the letter M. And then when they find it, then ask them, okay, go ahead and load it on the truck, because we're going to load the truck with all the letters. But, I'm the boss, and, and later he can be the boss, and he can call the names of the letters, and you pick them up. Sometimes pick up the wrong letter and let him be the boss and correct you. So at first, when they're trying to find the letter, just have there be 2 cards. So he's got a 50-50 chance of getting the right answer. And then as you recognize that he's beginning to learn some of the letters, and of course you're only going to do very few letters at a time, really get down ABC, let's say, and then you don't have to go in alphabetical order, but just gradually keep adding all the letters. By the way, the 2 most common letters in Standard American English are, and they're ones they should know, are S and E. Those 2 letters show up more often than any other letters. I'm sure the people that play Jeopardy know this. Okay, so after they've mastered, being pretty good at loading the truck with two cards, 2 letters, then gradually add 3 cards that they're going to pick from, and then maybe 4, and depending on how hotshot they are, you might get up to 5 or 6. Okay, another wonderful game is Find the Color. And you're going to use the 4 basic color crayons to start with, or objects that have those colors, like little plastic toys or something. And then you're going to say, find the red one. And then you're going to have this little pile of poker chips, something like poker chips or tiddlywinks or something that's like, a thing he can hold. So every time he gets one correct, you say, good for you, and you give him a chip. And he may trade in like 10 chips for a goldfish cracker or 10 chips for a raisin. Nothing big to eat, just a very small little something. So make it be enough chips to, really get some exposure. But again, keep it short, keep it fun. And if they're mistaken, this is a really important teaching tool, Mom and Dad. If they make a mistake, tell them the correct answer and then do it immediately right after that. Say they've missed find the yellow one, and he picks up the blue one and gives it to you, and you say, oh, okay, that one's blue, here's yellow. Then you put yellow down again with the other ones and say, find the yellow one. And if he gets it right, great, go on, do the next color, and then go right back to that yellow one again. That really reinforces learning, and it tends to stick longer. And the kids love that one. That's a fun game. Now, how we go about learning to read is a really complicated thing. I found this little picture of a brain that it's kind of like all these different roadways in the brain, and there's all these links that have to cooperate in order to allow for reading to happen. And there's just not one right set of connections in order to read, because reading is probably one of the most complex functions that the brain does for us. So if you're missing a link, or you have a very weak link genetically, this can cause problems if you're taught in a way that doesn't match the way you work. That is typically the basis of most reading disabilities in my experience. It's not that they can't learn to read, it's that they can't learn to read in the way in which they're being taught because it doesn't match the way their brain works. So later on, watch for other videos. I'll be doing some other videos on the different kinds of reading disabilities, and that might be interesting for you to tune into. So in order to get answers about what can I do for my child who's, let's say he's older, say he's a 2nd or 3rd or even 4th or 5th grader, and they're just struggling with learning how to read, well, the point is you can't learn anything, including reading, very successfully or easily if all the instruction is aimed at your weaknesses. You need to know how your child will be able to learn to read using their strengths, not their weaknesses. So in order to get more help, you can visit our website at www.neuroeducation, or you can call 509-747-0165. You can talk with our master teacher, Vivian Nielsen. She is a delightful lady. She's the head of the Learning Clinic, and we look forward to hearing from you. And thank you.